Yeah, you know. Hey, I'm Rick. This is your seat at the table. We're doing some videos today, right? This is Monday, the 10th of December. I just wasn't up to doing videos yesterday. It's been a rough. It's just been really rough. It just keeps getting worse. It doesn't get better. Anyway, we're looking at BattleTech Field Manual of Periphery. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why I so much associate myself with periphery nations. I just do. So this FanPro product, and I got this quite a few years ago, and I have read it 4 times now. 4 times. And one downside, this is rare, but it's starting to happen. There's the glues coming across from the binders. These binders, especially the ones that FASA made, were notorious for doing that, coming unglued. So a little bit of glue in there, it wouldn't take much to patch that, and I think that's probably what I'll do. Gotta get you don't want to just slap Elmer glue in there or super glue. Although I suspect super glue would work. They actually have certain types of glue that are better for paper and binding. Whether or not I want to spend the money to buy a bottle just to patch that, I don't know yet. So what we have here is the contents, the periphery nations, of course, the outside looking in, settling the fringe, the Star League, on the sidelines, periphery rosters, Magistracy of Canopus, one of my favorites, the Taurian Concordat, which is the best of the outer rim territories as far as I'm concerned. The Marian Hegemony, which used to be, it's once upon a time the hegemony was just a bandit kingdom. I don't think you can argue that they still are. I think that they have come a long way since then, and they still have a long way to go yet. But they could make it. The Outworlds Alliance, the Circinus Federation, however it's pronounced. Lesser Periphery States, Pirates Unit, Deep Periphery, that kind of stuff. Periphery Military Deployment Table Rules, Mech Warrior Rules. So this was published. What year was this put out? When was it published here? I gotta love it. And you gotta hunt. 2002. I think I bought this. 2002. It wasn't shortly after this. And I'm gonna reiterate. I'm thinking that's true because it's $25, $24.99. I don't remember buying this used off the internet anywhere. I mean, I'm pretty sure I didn't. Been a long, long time ago. So this is the latest updated version of that era from, I guess, not the latest, but circa 3063. So it gives us an outside looking in, settling the fringe, the concept of the piranha principle, that no matter how big a house is, they're not that big that they can be totally, there was a point when the FedCom might have been that house, but they didn't last. They got tore apart from the inside, which typical. So we got military disorganization. The thing about periphery nations, first off, many of them do not have the heavy industry required to manufacture battle mechs and aerospace fighters. Some of them have that industry, but it's very limited, or it's very archaic compared to the inner sphere, and let alone the clans. So production of mechs and high-end war equipment is slow and makes them extremely more valuable. So the lion's share of periphery states, they depend on acquiring these things, either purchasing from the factories outright, which is even rarer, or purchasing them secondhand, which is probably more frequently, and as spoils of war, captured. Right? It's the same way pirates get their stuff. So depending on the periphery nation, the outer houses or the periphery houses, the old houses all have some production for mechs and aerospace fighters, but you get into but that's very limited. The Outback Alliance is a grand example of that. But a lot changes for a few of them. So you could imagine with Clan Snow Ravens, the Snow Ravens becoming basically taking over the Outworlds Alliance. That has definitely changed. That they have access to a lot more firepower than they had prior to that. Rank structures, combat forces, Military disorganization. So when we talk about periphery states, they're going to be heavy on infantry and infantry fighting vehicles and armor, because those three things they can recruit, equip, and produce themselves. Some of the larger bandit kingdoms. That's why I said the hegemony kind of is phasing passing out of its really truly I hate this shit. And I say, do not. And you know how many times it tells me, I still tell it, do not show the window again. And what happens? What happens? What's the point of having the little box, the check mark that says don't show again if the bastard just keeps re-showing it? Just asking, right? So most of the periphery nations have access to the basics with a handful of more advanced weapon systems under construction. You move into the far smaller periphery nations, not so much. The hegemony, for example, they only have recently, in recent years, acquired the capabilities of producing armor. And as far as I know, they still do not have a mech manufacturing facility whatsoever, which I find ironic because you would I grant you that getting the components for mechs are hard, and it's what was that? Some weird noise. I'm hoping it was on TV. I never know. So the periphery nations have to get their stuff somewhere, and mostly it's stolen or purchased. And their manufacturing capacity for this sort of thing is very limited, which makes for some really good targets if you want to really shut them down. It wouldn't take much because you could just drop a battalion on top of their mech facility and it's done, right? But they're not far away from it. The first thing that for the Marian hegemony, for example, is they need to build the auxiliary support infrastructure and factories to produce the smaller, lighter components or less sophisticated components first. Then they could start upgrading and adding new factories that produce the more complicated stuff that eventually gives them everything they need to manufacture a mech. If they can get the Myanmar production facility, some kind of armor production facility in play, the actuators, now they need an actuator facility. You can get that actuator factory up and running. You get those three things, those three components. You can salvage and scrap, use scrapyard stuff to fill in the missing components. But what I'm getting at is it's a very short hop and a skip from building building all those components to actually manufacturing a mech. And it might be easier to acquire the parts you can't manufacture for the mech than it is to get all the parts. So, one of the earliest things that most bandit kingdoms, if they're smart, if the bandit leader is smart, will invest in is an armor factory and a munitions factory. You need to be able to, and preferably a refinery to do the coolant, because you need to access all this material to keep your mechs operational. And yes, you can steal it, but it's far better to make your own and have a steady supply of it. And surplus you can sell to your opponents or your neighbors, and which is often your opponents. So I mean, it's however you want to look at it. And I'm not going to break down all the various peripheries or periphery nations, because I've done a series of videos on these. Go look them up; they're pretty good. They got a lot of hits. All right, this is just the more updated version as of that era, and if you can get your hands on it, it's well worth having. And it gives you a really good insight into the periphery in the 30-60 era, roughly. So the end of the FedCom Civil War, the Battle of Tukiat's taking place, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not a bad addition. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of new stuff in here when I compared it to the original one, the original periphery one. And I don't know if this is number 1 or number 3. I don't know, because I know FanPro cranked out a whole lot of stuff, and then they had supplements, and then they had this, and they had that, and I don't know. But very nice book. Really is. Periphery deployment table, Castilian units. We get some extended rules, supplements, periphery regiments. Oh, excuse me. Great. Stuff like the Brotherhood of Randus. We got tour stage 4 tour duties. different places. They're trying to pull a little bit of a traveler thing here, trying to give yourself some backstory for your character. Anyway, this is a very nice book, and if you can get your hands on it, it's well worth getting to purchasing. Just saying. Anyway, I'm Rick. You got little mama sitting back here behind me. You guys have yourself a great holiday. I assume that this may or may not get posted between now and Christmas. It's hard to say. Generally speaking, as a rule, I like to have a half dozen videos in storage because my work schedules are so odd. It's hard to plan things. And then there's the motivation. I got really bummed out. Really bummed out. Never mind. Doesn't matter. You guys know.